Here are some things to know for CBT number 4. Medication acknowledgement. Electronic documentation of a medication, the simple scan, more than one scan, less than one scan, site documentation. Electronic documentation of a med not given, save and recompile, the last chance for change. Here are the learning objectives for CBT number 4. Demonstrate the medication acknowledgement process and recognize that it is an essential safety check. Demonstrate the documentation of a simple scan. Demonstrate the documentation of a dose requiring more than one. Demonstrate the documentation of a dose requiring less than one. Demonstrate the documentation of an administration site. Demonstrate the administration of a medication that is not given. Demonstrate the final editing and documentation of the MedPass in Save and Recompile. The first check, medication acknowledgement. Medication acknowledgement is the process of verifying the physician order against the pharmacy entry. Every medication must be checked completely to ensure patient safety. It is the acknowledgement process that ensures that the order correctly reflects the right med, right dose, right time, right route, and right indication before the medication ever leaves the patient drawer. Once acknowledged, every nurse caring for the patient is assured that the EMAR is accurate. If the nurse attempts to administer a medication prior to acknowledgement, the system will prompt a request for acknowledgement. Nurses should acknowledge medication orders while completing chart checks. To acknowledge a medication, the nurse must first scroll downward to review the medications and identify which ones do not have an A, an acknowledged med, in the mini box of the second column. Those meds are selected by checking the first column. As the nurse selects the medications, the field will turn blue and a check mark will appear. The nurse then clicks on the Acknowledge tab at the bottom of the EMAR page. The new screen is the Acknowledge screen, which the nurse must review for accuracy. If the order is correct, the nurse must click on the Acknowledge tab to verify that the order is accurate. Every medication that the nurse had checked initially will now populate one by one for acknowledgement. If the order is not transcribed correctly in the EMAR, the nurse selects the Hold Acknowledgement tab, and a comment box will appear. This allows the nurse to communicate to the pharmacy what the problem is in the free text. For example, if a dosage is incorrectly entered, the nurse could type wrong dose. To send this message, the nurse clicks the Hold Acknowledge tab at the bottom of the pop-up. This alleviates the need to call the pharmacy. The pharmacy will review all Hold Acknowledgement entries hourly. Documentation of medication administration. Scanning is your second check. Perform your verbal two-patient identifier. Scan your patient's armband. A barcode icon will then appear by the patient's name. Scan the barcode on your medication. If the scan is accepted, that is, the 6 rights are correct, a barcode icon will appear in the first column and an asterisk will appear next to the time. Always check your screen with each scanned med to ensure that the barcode icons have appeared, as this is your visual confirmation that your scanned entry is correct. The more than one transaction. When the medication order requires more than a singular form of the drug, for example 2 tablets, it is critical for patient safety that the nurse scan each barcode on each package individually. Every medication administered to a patient must be scanned. The EMAR prompts the nurse to scan until the desired dose is achieved. If the nurse fails to scan the additional medication needed to make the correct dosage, the system alerts her by a pop-up that states, "Scan additional barcodes," and the cursor will remain at the barcode scan field. The less than one transaction. For a dose requiring less than a whole, for example to administer half a tablet, the nurse scans the barcode of the package. An error message will appear, "Ordered dose exceeded. Please evaluate and adjust the dose administered if appropriate." Click OK. Then the cursor takes you to the dose administered field where the nurse will adjust to the actual required dose and enter on the keyboard. Documenting a site. When a site must be documented, a documentation box will appear and the nurse can select from a drop-down menu. Select the appropriate site and click Document. Documenting that a medication was not given. In order to document that a medication was not administered to a patient, the nurse clicks on the scheduled administration time and a documentation box will appear. Click Not Given and select the reason from the drop-down menu and then click Document. Save and recompile. The last chance for change. This is your third and final check. When the nurse has scanned all of the medications to be administered, the nurse will click on the Submit tab. This screen is the session summary screen. At this point, the nurse verifies that all medications and documentation are correct. This is your last opportunity to amend your entry before it is finalized. The green bar directs the organization of the page. The scan meds follow. At this point, the nurse will administer the medication to the patient. The nurse will now complete the documentation for the scanned medication by reviewing the list. If the medication is incorrect and needs to be removed from the list, the small box on the left on the medication name must be unchecked by clicking it. If the patient refuses after you have scanned, the nurse can select the Edit tab and then change the documentation as discussed previously. The nurse can also adjust site of administration if the patient preferred a different site than the one originally selected. After you have finished, you have three options. You can click Return to EMAR to save nothing and return to the EMAR, or click Save and Exit to return to the status board, or you can click Save and Recompile if the reviewed list is correct, which finalizes the documentation times and cannot be edited. This then returns you to the EMAR.